Welcome back. Right up front, I'd like to apologize for the video that you're about to watch. In fact, don't even watch it. What follows is my second attempt to analyze a game against one of my subscribers, or should I say former subscribers. In my first attempt, I saw that my opponent had played perfectly, and because I tend to not learn anything from games where my opponent plays perfectly, I just said, you know what, I apologize, I'm going to skip on to the next game, and I went on. And then a little bit later, I decided to go ahead and try to analyze that game anyway, and I did, in the video you're about to watch. But while I was analyzing that video, I found out that that opponent removed me as a friend on chess.com and apparently blocked me. I couldn't respond to some of the messages they had sent, so they may not even be a subscriber anymore. But because I went ahead and tried to learn something from this game, and I went ahead and recorded the video, I'm just going to edit it here. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that the misunderstanding that led to my opponent blocking me and probably stopped subscribing to me on the channel is a lot of people don't realize that chess isn't my job, YouTube isn't my job. I don't do this all day. This is just my hobby, and I have about an hour a day that I can focus on chess. And so sometimes I understand people get frustrated if I can't respond to them immediately. They may not also understand that I do these videos 2 or 3 days in advance, so I'll have time to edit and whatnot. And some of them are scheduled to go live, like this one. It's scheduled to show up to you a few days before it did. So that's a possible source of what happened here. But anyway, like I said, I apologize for what follows. Don't even watch it. I'm going to take another look at that game right now just to see if there's something that I could learn from it. As you can see, I only had 1 mistake and 2 inaccuracies. My opponent didn't have any, but maybe there's something that I could have done better, and I just want to try to find out what that is. And I'm going to go through. It looks like we made it to move 11 before I played an inaccuracy. My opponent opened with the English, which I have still yet to develop a defense against. It looks like I should play e5 according to Stockfish, but we all know that Stockfish in the first several moves is not going to be great. I had heard, I don't remember who from, in a recent video that knight to f6 was fine, so that's what I played. My opponent played what I expected, which is knight to c3. That's usually what follows this c4 move. Then I did play e5, and it does look like g3 is a popular move here, and that's what they played. At this point, I decided to not only blunt this coming bishop's attack on this pawn, but to also try to turn it into some kind of Caro-Kann defense by playing c6. I gained some control over the center. It does look like that's the move that the engine recommends here, so I don't feel too bad about playing that. Rather than fianchettoing immediately, my opponent got the knight out. I didn't think there were any problems here. I was kind of waiting for the d-pawn to move someplace so I could pin that knight. I didn't want to get this bishop out and then they play that, and then I would feel like I had wasted a move with the bishop. Here the engine says I should probably just play e4 and force that knight back. I guess that makes sense, although I guess I have to lose my hesitation of pushing pawns before I've developed. It's been hammered into my head not to move the same piece twice in the opening if you can help it, but that is definitely what the engine says here. And it says if I did that, they would play knight to d4, but then I could play d5, and they probably wouldn't take because I would take back. If I played here and they jumped in and I played d5, it says they would play d3 then, but I would already have a pawn here, so I could just take on d3, trading one center pawn for another, and then it says they would take my d-pawn at that point, and I guess I would take back. I'm not going to follow the line. I mean, like I said, I think that makes sense, but I played my second best move, which was instead of going with the full kind of Caro-Kann idea with d5 like I had originally intended, I decided just to defend this pawn, which they have attacked, so I played d6. It looks like that was one of my better moves as well. As expected, my opponent fianchettoed. They're now ready to castle. I'm going to also have to castle before too long. Oh, it does say bishop to e7 is my best move. And the move I played is not listed here. Okay, see, I did learn something here in my post-game analysis. I automatically did that because it seems like a natural thing, but for some reason I played knight b to d7. As expected, my opponent did castle. Queen to a5. I've been seeing that a lot in my last several analyses at random times. It says to play queen to a5. I'm not going to attack that. I'm not going to attack this. I don't need to defend that anymore. It doesn't really have anywhere to go from there, so I don't understand that at all. Maybe one of you can explain it, but it does have bishop to e7 again, which does make some sense. Just out of curiosity, are we still in a book here? We are still in a book, according to Master Games. There's still been 95 games that have reached this position, and more than 100, but almost all of them, 95, have played bishop to e7 here. But the next most common is g6, and it looks like that has a slightly higher win rate. Okay, well I did play g6 here, even though that wasn't one of the moves recommended by Stockfish. Still, we are within an acceptable range. My opponent played one of those moves. I'm curious, is that in the book? Yes. One game has played e4 here. Most masters have played d4 in this position to directly attack the center, since which makes sense since they have castled already and I have not. I guess it makes sense to try to break open here. Okay, I'll quit flipping back and forth. I was just curious about this one point. So the only master game that's reached this position ended in a draw, according to that opening book. Bishop to g7 is my best move here. And now I'm ready to castle. My opponent should play d4 before I castle, and they did. But I am supposed to castle. If they take here, I have multiple pieces defending that spot, so I shouldn't be too worried about it. Or it says I could go ahead and take. It says if I took right now, they would take back with the knight, and then I would castle. Otherwise, we're going to do basically the same thing afterwards. So I went ahead and castled. They have a bunch of moves that keep us close to even, and Stockfish is having trouble deciding which one is best. My opponent played h3, which was one of those moves. And even though I didn't understand queen to a5 earlier, I do kind of understand queen to b6. It does look like a pawn can immediately challenge my queen here, but of course I have two pieces defending that square, so, you know, I could take. If they took back, I could put my knight there. The idea of queen to b6 is, for me anyway, is twofold. One is to get my queen out of a possible pin if they ever move this bishop over here to g5. That's one thing. The second thing is to put it on the same diagonal as their king. And the third thing is to aim at this B pawn. That's not quite as important. It's fairly easy for them to defend the B pawn. They could move it up where both the queen and the other pawn would protect it. They can push the rook over to B1, or they could just leave that bishop there for a moment and keep protecting it. They can put the queen here. There's, you know, so mainly it's the two things. It's to get the queen out of this pin and to put it on the same diagonal as the king, at least in my mind. But that is the top move, and so I did play it. But my opponent played a relatively normal move in e4 openings, which is to put the rook here. I don't know if that's common in the English or not. I don't face it enough, but I guess it makes sense since they now have played e4 to put a rook behind that. But now it says we're dead even if I'll take this pawn. Okay, well, all I saw is I was probably going to need another defender here before too long, and so I pulled this knight back, and thinking about maybe pushing this pawn forward and also allowing the bishop to defend that. But also, I thought about maybe breaking here, and I can't because this f6 knight is in the way. That's why I played this. It seemed like it had a purpose. That wasn't great. My opponent played their best move here, which looked like no matter what I did, they were going to play d5 according to those lines. And my idea of pulling this knight out of the way so I could move my f pawn was not a good idea. The f pawn is not in the cards for me. I'm supposed to put this knight up here on c5 or take this pawn, in which case they would take back with the knight because that threatens my queen. Okay, before I go any further, I want to check the notes that my opponent sent me on this because I don't think I've passed what they were talking about yet, but let me just check. Oh, the chat messages that were sent to me during the game are not there anymore. Well, that's a little bit embarrassing for that to happen on video, but it does look like that this person has removed me as a friend. So, and the chat, like I said, the chat messages have been moved or removed. I didn't know you could do that. I thought once you chatted in the game that it was still there, and I was kind of counting on going to those messages as I did this. Okay, well, it seems like I might have made a mistake in the previous video where I decided not to analyze this game. But I've come back. It was just too late. Okay. Queen to c7 is a move here. I guess that's all right because it does look like they could challenge me before too long. Knight e to f6. Oh, it wants me to put this knight back. All right. Well, again, the whole reason that I moved the knight back in the first place was I was thinking either to go here to add another defender, which it doesn't need now because they moved that d pawn. It's not attacking this pawn anymore, or to go on past to break this open. So that's what I played, and it says that was my only inaccuracy of the game, right? No, I apologize. I had two inaccuracies in this game, but this was my first one. And it looks like I think the first place that we got beyond 0.5 or, you know, it's been in plus 0 point something the whole time. And this move took us to, looks like 0.9 is what the Stockfish is going to settle on, right around 0.9. And that's because they can just take. I was expecting them to take, and I thought I would take here, and I would have this semi-open file for my rook that they couldn't, I mean, they could immediately challenge it with the knight over here, but that would be a little bit of a weird move, especially since I could bring it straight back. I didn't see a problem with this. And then, it's not quite a passed pawn yet, but I have a pawn with nobody in front of it. That seemed okay to me. Here is, yeah, I wish those chat messages were still there. I think this was one of the points at which my opponent mentioned that they thought that my next move was a mistake. The engine says there is a difference between, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't even consider taking with my g-pawn here. I mean, I might have considered it briefly, but I didn't consider it seriously because that pawn's in front of my king, and it's kind of, one of the connected pieces there. And if I put it up here, I mean, it is defended by the rook, but then it's open right through here, isn't it? Even though the messages in chat were deleted, the private messages sent to me were not deleted. They're still there. And yes, this was the point that my opponent was talking about. Said this move here was a turning point when I took here with the rook. Stockfish seems to think so too, although it looks like the previous move was just as big of a turning point. Because before I played that, we were at 0.2 or 0.3. It's having trouble deciding. And then after I played this, it's close to +1. So that's like a 50 or 60 point. That's like, 50 or 60 points. I mean, you know what I mean? Decimals, you know what I'm saying? Out of 100ths of a point there, it's that's a pretty big percentage jump. More than doubled White's minor, very minuscule advantage by me playing this. Whereas when I took with the rook, it didn't double. We just went up another 30 hundredths or so. So even though it counted that one as a mistake because the game review rated it much worse, here on this evaluation, it wasn't as bad as playing f5. And again, I'm not sure what the problem with it is, but my opponent believed this to be a turning point in the game. Best move here says bishop to e3. Okay, well that's kind of what I, was wondering about when they were going to threaten this queen here. And if they played that, it says then I would take this pawn at that point. If they played bishop to e3, which is their best move, I would take this pawn that they had left undefended, and then they would leave everything sitting there, including this undefended knight, and take my c-pawn, which would be attacking this knight. Okay, and then I would play knight to d something. Wait, no, it says I would take back, and then they would put this knight in there where the pawn had been, so I couldn't take it with my queen. I don't know if that's what I would have played or not. Had they challenged my queen here, I probably would not have taken that pawn because it certainly looks like I can get myself in a lot of trouble down there. If they had put their bishop here, I probably would have just slid it back one. Rook to b1 is another one, I suppose, to defend that pawn. They played the fifth one, which is queen to c2. I think the general idea of putting the queen up is to connect the rooks. That wouldn't work in this case because the bishop's still there, but queen to c2 seems like, I guess, an okay place to put it. It does defend this pawn in case you ever do move the bishop. But again, I probably wasn't going to take that pawn when the bishop moved. But that's what they played, and they're up +1, and my best move is to put the rook back. Okay, well, it didn't look like it was in danger just yet. That's the queen pointed at it. The queen's not going to take here, I'm pretty sure. My second best move is to do what I would play if I was worried about the bishop coming, but I thought I could always do that after the bishop came. And my next best move was to go ahead and hop this knight in here. Okay, well, that's what I played. And again, I do not understand why the engine has us evaluated at such a high, almost 1.5 here, 1.45, if they'll play bishop e3 to challenge my queen, which they did. And again, I thought that they might. What? Oh, now... Okay, well, for once I feel smarter than Stockfish. I saw queen to c7 instantly, had been seeing it for several turns now, knowing that that bishop could go there. It's not attacking me just yet, but I mean, they can hit that with the nut, with the pawn or something, so I need to move my queen. Well, I saw that a lot faster than Stockfish did. I'm really surprised. It says, you know what, it'd be just fine if you put this rook back here. And then they would play g4. I don't think that they would. I think if I just brought my rook back, they would play b4 almost immediately. But b4 is not listed here anywhere. Okay, well, maybe this opponent wouldn't. In many time controls, this opponent is rated far higher than me. For example, I think they're over 17 or maybe 1800 in rapid, so maybe they wouldn't play b4. Maybe there's a good reason not to. I don't know what that reason would be, but I think if I did anything other than queen to c7, if I left these two pieces sitting here, their next move would probably be this at my level, is what I'm saying, because that looks like it wins a free piece here. And if I move the knight, well, my queen's gone. Well, I could see that, which is why I moved my queen. I'm surprised it took Stockfish so long to see that. But now it's 1.6. 1.5. Okay, but g4 is the best move because it hits the rook. Okay, I get that. I was planning on bringing it back at some point. It's changed its mind. Queen to d2. Rook a to d1. That's what they played. Rook a to d1. I mean, that makes sense. This pawn's, I guess, past the halfway point. Also, it's about to get out of the way. So I think I understand rook to d1. These are the two files where they won't have any pawns once this one gets out of the way. So I understand that. Again, still don't understand why I'm down 1.5 here. Rook to f8 is my best move. Stockfish might change its mind, but that's what I played and what I had planned the whole time. It says they should go ahead and take this knight now. I would take, and then they would slide their queen over. Or knight to g5, which I guess aims in here. but they wouldn't go there yet because my knight's still there. They would just have it here ready on g5, waiting for me to not be guarding that square, because I probably wouldn't push this immediately. It says that I would not. In fact, it says if they played that, I would play here, threatening their queen. I don't know that if I would. It seems like they would just move their queen over. G4 is still listed pretty high, just not quite as high as taking the knight now. Taking the knight now, like I said, it would double my pawns. It would allow them to push this pawn forward, or to take and clear up another file for the rook. But G4 was their best move previously, and they played that. I suppose that's to prevent me from putting my bishop here. Now, before, when my rook was still up there, I thought that was to challenge my rook. But I think now that I look at it, I think it's to prevent the bishop from coming here. But again, I wasn't going to put it there because that's an empty threat. That seems like a beginner move to me. Now, I do want to develop it. And that's one problem I'm having here in this version of this opening is I haven't moved that bishop yet. I would like to. I would like to connect my rooks, but I'm, kind of running out of places to do it. I can't put it there. It looks like right now I can only put it here, and then I'm going to have to move my queen someplace in order to get this knight out. So yeah, that's getting a little frustrating. I'm feeling a little cramped here. It says I should play knight to a6. That's here because I should anticipate them taking it. Well, I did anticipate them taking it. I just didn't think I should put it over there very close to the corner where it couldn't do anything. I came down here with it, but that wasn't among this top 5. Okay, we're almost at +2 now. And remember, it was the inaccuracy of f5 that provided the biggest jump in points. Everything after that, including the mistake, was a very incremental move up in the the evaluation here. My opponent now is supposed to play knight g5, which we saw was their best move a few moves ago, or among their best moves. I assume it aims in here. Now, right now, that's fantastic. I see why it's fantastic here because of this fork. I don't know if I saw that when they first played it. I assume that I saw this pawn, and if they do want to put the knight in there, that means they can't be taking over here on c5 like they were doing earlier. Need to play knight d to f6. Okay, that gets out of the way of the bishop defending that square. Or put the knight back on its home square. That's where it started. It came out here, it went up there, and now it's come back. And now Stockfish says, just go ahead and put it back where it came from. Well, you know what I did? I put it back in the other place that it came from, which got us over +2. And again, that was to, same thing Stockfish was thinking, just a bad idea, I guess because they can take it? No, because they can attack it. Well, they did. Did I finally put it on a6? No, I did not. I played the next best move. Yeah, Stockfish says now, might as well give up, but if you're not going to give up, put it on a6. Well, apparently I gave up because I said, oh no, what am I going to do? And I put it back here. That allows this. And so I have to move my queen, but I can't move it here because of the knight, or there because of the bishop, or there because of the pawn. So I've got it trapped. So I have to go to b8. Now I did figure that out. I'm not my IQ was slightly higher than that of a stone. And I don't mean your really smart stones, just your average stones. I'm a little smarter than that. And so I did that. And of course they're going to get my rook, right? Is that their best move? It is. And they did that. And the reason that I resigned here wasn't that I was down a rook, because it's not a full clean rook. I can take back. I can take back here. The reason that I resigned is because I'm stuck. Even after I take back, I don't know which way would have been best to take back. It says with the knight captures f8, okay. And second best would be with the bishop, and third best, pretty bad, would be with the king. I don't know exactly why. Maybe that one's best because it does finally get out of the way of this bishop. Maybe this one's bad because it, the bishop doesn't want to be back on its home square. Maybe this is bad because it, puts the king on an almost open file. But I resigned here because I thought, even if I take with one of these pieces, look at this. They're going to be up 2 points of material after this exchange. They're controlling lots of space on my side of the board. Lots of space. The knight's controlling here too. They're hitting that, hitting this, hitting that. That pawn is probably the safest piece on the board. It's very well defended. There's nothing to stop them from coming further. There's nothing to, once this starts clearing out, there's nothing really to stop all of this from avalanching through here. If they take here and I take back, that bishop's going to hit it, right? And then my rook, where's my rook going to go? It's not going to go anywhere. It can't move at all. So I realized I'm about to go down another exchange after I take this knight. Okay, and what was the other thing my opponent said in the message that I could learn from? Okay, what they've said here, I copied and pasted it into a text document. It says, one reason I did not make any mistakes is that you did not ever really pose any real problems. And, well, I had a lot of time to consider my mostly straightforward options. Okay, I get that I didn't pose them any real problems. That's obvious here, but they had mostly straightforward options. I guess that was straightforward. I backed up here to right before I played f5. But here we're under 0.5, and I should have played knight to c5, and they would have played rook to b1. But instead I played here. And okay, I get that that's a mostly straightforward option. I get that. Although Stockfish is having trouble deciding if that's really straightforward. It thinks this is just as straightforward. Or knight to g5 now. Just as good. Okay, it did settle on taking the pawn. Okay, but to me that seems straightforward. I agree with my opponent there. Taking that pawn, that's what you're going to do when someone puts one there, because it's you're not worried about diverting a center pawn now since you already have a rook on this file, and chopping away at the king's area here. Now, what does not seem straightforward at all to me is taking back with the g-pawn. I still don't get that. I still don't see why taking with the rook is worse. Even though I saw the result of it, I don't understand how I could possibly see that now. Why is that worse? Again, I expected them to attack my queen and I would drop back. It says that I wouldn't have. It says I would have pushed my pawn. Here, I thought earlier queen to c2 was listed as one of their top 5 moves. It's not anymore. I don't get how that's straightforward. They're not going to take the rook with it. Putting the rook back seems okay to me, but I don't know why I have to do it now, right? Because they haven't played this yet. They haven't put a knight out here to attack the rook yet. Seems fine. I can always bring it back. This seemed a little straightforward to me because, again, I thought they might be ready to develop this bishop, which this is when they did that. But, it made sense to me to move the queen back now. And again, it's taking Stockfish a long time to decide whether or not that's the best move. But the knight was defended by the pawn, so I didn't need to defend it with the queen, and I didn't want my queen penned by it in case they played b5. This time, yeah, it's taken a long time, and it still didn't decide it was best. Right now, it's saying e4 is best, and they would put this knight in here, attacking my rook, and I wouldn't boot my rook all the way back then. I would just bring it back here. Rook a to d1. I guess I could flip the board. This video is already too long, and I haven't learned anything from it. That's just why I didn't go through it in the other video, but I guess rook a to d1 makes sense if you are, intending to soon capture the c-pawn and have, this rook on a file, or to protect it in case black decides to attack it. But no, I'm not at the level where that's an obvious move right now. I know rooks belong on open files, but that's not open, and I don't have any way of knowing if it's going to be an open file. Much more advanced players clearly know when they talk about pawn breaks, they talk about, oh, well, the rook has to go to, to c8 right now because c is going to be the open file in 5 minutes. Every time I do that, that's not the file that opens up, and I've wasted a move with my rook. So I have no talent, no ability to guess which files are going to be open before long. But my opponent does. My opponent has either been playing chess long enough or has studied it well enough that they guessed that this was the best place for the rook, and they guessed the same as the engine did. Let me flip it back here. Well, now rook to f8 has slid down the list a little bit, but yeah, knight to a6. What in the world? How would I guess that that's a good move here? I think here I even briefly considered playing the b-pawn forward so that either my knight or my bishop could go this way. One of them could go there and one of them could go to the other side. And I wasn't worried about that not defending this pawn because my queen would also be defending the pawn. And if I had a chance to put my bishop there, then my bishop would also be defending that pawn. But that way I could finally get this a rook out, get this, light squared bishop in motion. But this had to be played first for some reason. I don't know. That seemed like the best move to me. I guess, a little worried about this here, and that is their best move. Part of it's because I usually play opponents at my level, and many of them, not all of them, but many of them are very trade happy. They'll take here. So, I knew I was going to have to double this pawn. Probably wasn't anything I could do about that. And I knew that, this pawn might push at some point. Not right now, because right now I can take it. And they wouldn't take with their rook because they don't want to trade the rook for this knight and a pawn. The rook and the pawn for knight. You know what I mean. But anyway, I was worried about this because doubling the pawns does kind of help them clear this path. And maybe they'd be willing to give up the pawn to fulfill their prophecy of the rook being on the correct file. Maybe that was in the cards. Maybe they thought this would be worth it. The position's fairly closed. My bishop hasn't moved yet. Maybe they'd be willing to give up a bishop and give up a pawn to have their rook on an open file. I don't know. Maybe they wouldn't, because once that pawn, is gone, then my bishop can get out. So maybe they wouldn't have done that. I don't know. But g4 was way up there, and they did play it. Supposed to play knight to a6. Again, queen to e7. was listed, still is, a5. Did I miss that earlier? a5 looks like it gets really ready for this knight to come in here. Not yet, because my pawn is still guarding b5, but that removes another possibility of defending that square or attacking that square. But maybe it's time to start pushing these pawns. Or e4. e4 looks like it just gives up the pawn and fulfills this rook's prophecy of being on an open file, right? They can take it. If I take back, boom, they have a rook and the queen on this open file. And it says that's what would happen. And I would put this knight back here to tell the queen to go back, but then that rook's on an open file and this one's getting close to being on one, whichever way it goes. That seemed reasonable at the time, but again, I guess the problem with it is that it doesn't defend e6, and that encouraged them to do this. Okay, this one, I think I will concede that this one is straightforward, even to someone at my level. I get it. And I needed to get this knight out of the way because I needed this bishop to guard that file. You know what? Maybe earlier that's one reason that it said to bring the rook back here? No, because the knight would be hitting it there. But I do need to get out of the way of this bishop. And I did, I just went the wrong direction with it. But yeah, you can see here that it wasn't the mistake. It was the f5 inaccuracy. And then after that, all these other moves that I made that were slightly less than ideal made the rating worse by a number of degrees that's larger than what my mistake did. Remember, that mistake only bumped me by like 0.3 or so, from 0.9 to 1.2. And some of these others have gotten me over to 2 point something. Just the cumulative effect of all of these moves that were slightly less than ideal. But I don't understand why any of my moves were bad. And that's why I didn't want to go through this game. And I just spent 40 minutes that I didn't really have trying to please an opponent that's already blocked me. Well, if you can explain any of this, I would appreciate it. And if not, I'm going to put this video up anyway because I spent the time going through this game. But this is why I don't go through games where, normally, this is why I don't go through games where my opponent didn't make any mistakes and I never had an advantage. And this is why I play unrated daily games against my subscribers, because I just get tore up like this. I'm pretty sure none of you made it this far in the video, but if you did, I do appreciate you spending your time here. And if you thought of something to explain in the comments or just to sympathize with me, I appreciate that too. I'll see you next time.